On our wedding night, he said, "I'll be back in a minute," and he returned with a family that wasn't mine. My husband, the man I had married just 6 hours earlier, looked at me with those eyes I thought I knew better than my own, and said, "I'll be back in a minute, my love. I forgot something in the car." A minute. That's what he said. What he did not tell me was that the something he had forgotten in the car was actually a woman named Patricia and 2 children aged 4 and 6, who carried his last name. What he did not tell me was that during the 3 years of our courtship, he had been living a double life so perfectly orchestrated that not even the best soap opera writer could have imagined it. What he did not tell me was that that night, the night that was supposed to be the beginning of our life together, would actually be the end of everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and loyalty. But wait, because this story does not end with my tears. This story ends with his. My name is Valentina. I am 32 years old, and until exactly 14 months ago, I believed my life was perfect. Not perfect in the fairy tale sense, because I was never a naive woman. Perfect in the sense that everything seemed to fit. I had a stable job as an accountant at a medium-sized but respectable firm. I had a small but cozy apartment in a safe part of the city. I had friends I met with on Fridays to drink wine and complain about our bosses. And I had Rodrigo Mendoza Carrillo, the man I met in the supermarket line on an ordinary Tuesday 4 years ago, when he offered to help me reach a can of tuna on the highest shelf. He was 1 meter 85 centimeters tall, had honey-colored eyes, slightly wavy hair, and a smile that could melt glaciers. But what attracted me most about him was not his appearance, but the way he looked at me, as if I were the only person in that entire crowded supermarket. As if he had just found something he had been searching for years. "Tuna in water or in oil?" he asked me, holding the 2 cans as if they were trophies. "In water," I replied, feeling ridiculously flushed. "I'm trying to eat healthier." "Then let me buy you a coffee. It has no calories if you don't add sugar." It was the cheesiest line I had ever heard in my life, and it worked perfectly. That coffee turned into a dinner. That dinner turned into another. And before I knew it, Rodrigo had settled into my life with the naturalness of someone who had always belonged there. He called me every day at 7 in the morning to wish me a good day. He sent me flowers at work whenever I had a difficult week. He remembered every little detail I mentioned: my shellfish allergy, my favorite movie, the name of my elementary school teacher, who had left a lasting mark on me. He was attentive, affectionate, thoughtful. The kind of man all my friends envied and that my mother adored from the first moment she met him. "That boy looks at you the way your father looked at me when we were dating," she told me after the first family dinner. "Don't let him go, Valentina. Men like that don't exist anymore." And I believed her. Of course I believed her. Why wouldn't I? What I didn't know was that Rodrigo had perfected the art of lying long before he met me. What I didn't know was that while he swore eternal love to me in front of my family, he had another family waiting for him in another city. What I didn't know was that every business trip, every conference, every last-minute emergency that forced him to cancel our plans was actually time stolen for his other life. But I would discover that later, much later. Our relationship progressed like any normal relationship. There were small fights, sweet reconciliations, moments of routine, and moments of passion. 6 months after we met, Rodrigo introduced me to his parents. Well, to the people he said were his parents. Don Roberto and Doña Carmen lived in a modest house on the outskirts of the city and welcomed me with open arms. "Finally, our son has found a good woman," Doña Carmen told me as she served me a generous portion of her famous tres leches cake. We were losing hope. "It's just that Rodrigo was always very demanding," added Don Roberto with a knowing smile. "But when he told us about you, we knew you were special." I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. I had the perfect man and the perfect in-laws. What more could I ask for? What I didn't notice at the time were the small inconsistencies. The looks Don Roberto and Doña Carmen exchanged when Rodrigo talked about his work. The way they changed the subject whenever I asked about his childhood. The photo albums they never showed me, the family stories that were always half told. It's just that my family is very private, Rodrigo explained when I mentioned it. They don't like to talk much about the past. They had difficult times. And I, like the idiot I was, nodded understandingly and didn't ask again. A year into the relationship, Rodrigo asked me to move in together. We found a larger apartment in a better area, and I sold mine to contribute to the purchase. He put up the rest of the money. Or so he said. The apartment was in both our names, although he insisted I sign some papers that, according to him, were just bureaucratic formalities. Trust me, he said, with that smile that always disarmed me. It's just paperwork. What matters is that this will be our home. I signed without reading. First mistake. After 2 years, Rodrigo proposed to me in Paris. He had organized a surprise trip for my birthday, and on the last night, in front of the illuminated Eiffel Tower, he knelt down with a diamond ring that must have cost a fortune. Valentina, these 2 years with you have been the best of my life. I want to spend the rest of my days making you happy. Would you do me the honor of being my wife? I said yes through tears of happiness. My friends screamed with excitement when I showed them the pictures. My mother cried with joy. Everyone congratulated me on having found the ideal man. No one suspected a thing. Not even me. The wedding was planned for the autumn of the following year. I wanted something intimate, but Rodrigo insisted on a big celebration. We only get married once, my love, he said. I want everyone to know how much I love you. So we rented an elegant hall, hired the best caterer, sent invitations to 200 people, and spent more money than we had. Rodrigo took care of most of the payments, or so he led me to believe. Whenever I asked about the numbers, he reassured me. Don't worry about that. You just worry about looking beautiful that day. And I worried about looking beautiful. I spent months looking for the perfect dress, trying out hairstyles, choosing flowers. I obsessed over every detail, while he supposedly took care of the important things. There were warning signs. There were, but I was so blinded by emotion that I didn't want to see them. For example, Rodrigo never wanted me to meet his childhood friends. He said he had grown apart from all of them when he moved to the city for university. People change, Valentina. I have nothing in common with them anymore. There were also times when his phone would ring at odd hours and he would leave the room to answer. He always had an explanation: a difficult client, a demanding boss, a coworker with a crisis. It's the price of having a good position, he would tell me. But things will calm down soon. And then there were the trips. Rodrigo traveled at least twice a month for work, sometimes 3 times. He said it was part of his job as a sales manager for a technology company. He always came back with gifts for me: perfumes, jewelry, brand-name clothes. He made me feel special. He made me feel loved. What I didn't know was that those trips weren't to conferences or business meetings. They were to another house, to another bed, to another family. Our wedding day dawned perfectly. Clear sky, pleasant temperature, not a cloud in sight. My mother arrived at 7 in the morning to help me get ready, and together we spent hours with makeup artists, stylists, and photographers. You look radiant, my love, she told me as she helped me put on my dress. Your father would be so proud. My father had died 5 years earlier, the victim of a sudden heart attack. His absence was the only blemish on that perfect day, but I felt that somehow he was present. I carried his photo in a small locket, hidden in the folds of my dress, near my heart. He is here, Mom, I told her. I know it. The ceremony was beautiful. Rodrigo waited for me at the altar with shining eyes, and when we said our vows, his voice trembled with emotion. Or so I thought. Now I wonder if it was emotion or nervousness, if it was love or guilt, if it was happiness or fear of being discovered. I love you more than anything in this world, he told me as he put the ring on my finger, and I believed him. Of course I believed him. The reception was spectacular. We danced, laughed, toasted. My friends hugged me. My uncles congratulated me. My mother cried with joy. Everything was perfect. Absolutely perfect. Until it wasn't. At 10 o'clock at night, Rodrigo and I said goodbye to the guests and went up to the bridal suite he had reserved at the city's most exclusive hotel. It was a huge room with a view of the city, a giant bed with rose petals, and a hot tub that promised nights of passion. "Finally alone," he said, as he kissed my neck. "Mrs. Mendoza." I laughed foolishly. "Mrs. Mendoza." I liked how it sounded. We kissed for a few minutes, and then he pulled away. "I'm going to freshen up a bit," he said. "Why don't you get comfortable? I have a surprise for you." He winked at me and disappeared into the bathroom. I took the opportunity to change out of my wedding dress into the negligee I had bought, especially for that night. It was white silk, with delicate lace that left little to the imagination. I looked at myself in the mirror and felt beautiful, desired, loved. Rodrigo came out of the bathroom, dressed in suit pants and a shirt. I thought it was strange that he hadn't put on something more comfortable, but I didn't pay much attention. "You look gorgeous," he told me, as he looked me up and down. "But before you know, I need to run down to the car for a moment. I forgot something important." I frowned. "Now, what did you forget?" "It's a surprise," he told me with that smile that always disarmed me. "I'll be back in a minute. Don't move." He gave me a quick kiss on the lips and left the room. A minute. That's what he said. 5 minutes passed, 10, 15. Half an hour. I started to worry. I sent him a message. Nothing. I called him. Voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. Again. After 45 minutes, I went down to the reception in my robe to ask if anyone had seen him. The receptionist looked at me with a strange expression. "Your husband left a while ago, ma'am. He seemed to be in a hurry." "He left? Where to?" "I don't know. He got into a taxi and left." The world stopped. Or at least that's what I felt. A taxi. On our wedding night, without telling me anything. I went back to the room with my heart pounding a mile a minute. I tried to convince myself there was a logical explanation. Maybe there was a family emergency. Maybe his phone had died. Maybe I was an idiot who didn't want to see the truth. Rodrigo returned at 3 in the morning. I was sitting on the bed, still in my negligee, my eyes swollen from crying, and my makeup smeared all over my face. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice breaking. He stood in the doorway, looking at me with an expression I had never seen before. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't remorse. It was something colder, more calculated. As if he were weighing his words before saying them. "Valentina, we need to talk." Those 4 words, the 4 words no one ever wants to hear. "Talk? Now? You left me alone on our wedding night for 4 hours. 4 hours, Rodrigo, and now you want to talk." He sighed and sat in the armchair facing the bed. He didn't even come near me. He didn't even try to comfort me. "There's something I should have told you a long time ago," he began. "Something I didn't know how to tell you. Something that—" "What? What could be so important as to ruin our wedding night?" He looked me in the eyes, and in that moment, before he said another word, I knew with the absolute certainty of someone who has been deceived and finally sees the truth that was always in front of their eyes. "I have another family." 3 words. Just 3 words, and my entire world collapsed. "What?" That was all I could say. My brain refused to process what I had just heard. "I have another family." What did that mean? An ex-wife? Children from another relationship? What? "Her name is Patricia." Rodrigo continued with a calmness I found obscene. "We've been together for 8 years. We have 2 children. Mateo is 6, and Sophia is 4. 8 years. 8 years. That meant that when we met, when he looked at me in the supermarket as if I were the only person in the world, he already had a wife and a child. When he proposed to me in front of the Eiffel Tower, she was pregnant with their second baby. "I don't understand," I murmured. "Why? How? Why did you marry me, if you were already married?" "Technically I'm not married to her," he replied, as if that mattered. "We lived together, but we never legally married. That's why I could marry you." "That doesn't make sense. Why would you do something like that? Why would you do this to me?" For the first time, something resembling emotion crossed his face. but it wasn't remorse. It was frustration. Because I love you, Valentina. I truly love you. What happened with Patricia was a youthful mistake. She got pregnant when we were very young, and I felt obligated to stay. But I never loved her the way I love you. And why didn't you leave her? Why didn't you tell me before? Because I was afraid of losing you. I thought that if I told you, you would leave. And I couldn't bear the idea of living without you. I got out of bed, my legs shaking. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This man to whom I had just sworn eternal love in front of God and 200 people, had been lying to me from day one. And what's supposed to happen now? I asked. Are the three of us going to live together? Are you going to go from one house to the other? What? I was going to leave her, he said. That was the plan, to marry you and then tell her it was over. But tonight, she called me. Matteo had an accident. He fell down the stairs and broke his arm. I had to go to the hospital. So that's where you went. Yes. I couldn't ignore it, Valentina. He's my son. And there it was. The reason he had abandoned me on our wedding night. A child I didn't know, a family I knew nothing about, an entire life he had kept hidden for 3 years. I need you to leave. I told him with a calmness that surprised even me. Now, Valentina, please, get out. My scream echoed in the room. Rodrigo looked at me for a long moment and then slowly nodded. All right, I'll give you space. But this isn't over. I love you and I'm gonna show you I can make things right. He left the room without looking back, and I was left alone in that bridal suite full of rose petals and broken promises, wondering how I had been so blind. The following days were hell. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. How could I? How could I tell my mother, my friends, everyone who had celebrated my wedding, that the man I had married had another family? I made up excuses. I told everyone Rodrigo had a work emergency and that the honeymoon had been postponed. My mother believed me. My friends believed me. Or maybe they just pretended to believe me because they didn't want to face the truth any more than I did. Rodrigo called me every day. He sent me messages. He sent me flowers. Every time, he swore he was going to leave Patricia, that he just needed time to do it the right way, that he didn't want to hurt his children. Give me 3 months, he begged me in one of our conversations. Just 3 months to sort everything out. After that, it will be just you and me. And I, like the imbecile I was, gave him those 3 months. I wanted to believe he truly loved me. I wanted to believe everything could be fixed. I wanted to believe my marriage hadn't been a complete farce. But something had changed in me. The blind trust I had in Rodrigo had turned into constant suspicion. I started paying attention to details I had previously ignored. I started asking questions. I started investigating. And what I discovered was far worse than I could ever have imagined. It all started with a receipt I found in the pocket of one of his suit jackets. It was from a jewelry store, dated 2 weeks before our wedding. The amount was considerable, $5,000, but I hadn't received any jewelry worth that much. My engagement ring had been bought more than a year earlier, and since then he hadn't given me anything that expensive. I called the jewelry store pretending to be his assistant. I told them I needed to confirm a purchase for tax purposes. The saleswoman was very friendly. Yes, of course. Mr. Mendoza bought a diamond necklace with her name engraved. For Patricia, my eternal love. Do you need anything else? I hung up without answering. My eternal love, that's what he had written to her. To Patricia, 2 weeks before marrying me. But that was just the beginning. During the following weeks, I became a detective in my own life. I checked bank statements, bills, emails. I found hotel reservations he had never mentioned, purchases at baby stores, tuition payments for a kindergarten, an entire parallel world that existed behind my back. And then I found the photos. Rodrigo was careful with his phone, but one night, while he was sleeping, I managed to unlock it. What I saw took my breath away. There were hundreds of photos of Patricia and the children, beach vacations, birthdays with cakes and balloons, Christmases by the tree, all dated during the 3 years we had been together. While I thought he was at work conferences, he was building sand castles with his children. While I waited for him alone on weekends, when he had to work, he was blowing out candles with another family. But what hurt the most was one photo in particular. It was from 2 months ago, right before our wedding. Rodrigo and Patricia were sitting in an elegant restaurant, she dressed in red, he wearing the same suit he had worn at our first dinner. Under the photo was a caption, celebrating 8 years together. I love you more than yesterday, but less than tomorrow. 8 years. He had told me it was a youthful mistake, that he had never loved her, that he was only with her out of obligation. But that photo told a very different story. I confronted Rodrigo the next day. I showed him the jewelry receipt, the photos, the messages. I expected him to break down, to apologize, to swear it had all been a mistake. Instead, he got angry. You went through my phone? He yelled. Who gave you the right? Who gave me the right? I'm your wife, Rodrigo. There aren't supposed to be secrets between us. This is an invasion of my privacy. Your privacy. What about my dignity? What about all the lies you've told me? The argument lasted for hours. He tried to justify everything. The necklace was a birthday gift. Nothing more. The photos were old. The messages didn't mean anything. According to him, everything had a perfectly reasonable explanation. Valentina, you have to understand me. He finally told me with tears in his eyes, Patricia is the mother of my children. I have to maintain a good relationship with her for their sake. But that doesn't mean I love her. I love you. Only you. I wanted to believe him. God knows I wanted to believe him. But I couldn't anymore. I need time, I told him. I need to think. How much time? As much as is necessary. That night I slept on the sofa, and for the first time since our wedding, I began to plan my exit. The first thing I did was talk to a lawyer. A friend of my father recommended Alejandro Torres, a divorce specialist who was known to be ruthless when the situation called for it. Mrs. Mendoza, he told me, after hearing my story, your situation is complicated but not impossible. The marriage is only 3 months old, which makes annulment easier. Furthermore, if we can prove your husband acted fraudulently in hiding the existence of another family, we could request considerable financial compensation. Compensation? I don't care about the money. I just want out of this. I understand. But before making any decisions, I need you to gather all the evidence possible. Bank statements, messages, photos, anything that demonstrates the deception. The more we have, the better your position will be. So that's what I did. During the following weeks, I became a spy in my own marriage. I copied documents, saved conversations, took screenshots, all while pretending that things between Rodrigo and I were improving. And he believed it. The idiot believed it. I knew you'd understand, he told me one night over dinner. I knew our love was stronger than any obstacle. I smiled sweetly at him, while inside I counted the days. But the real bombshell came when I least expected it. It was a Saturday afternoon. Rodrigo had gone out for a run, which I knew meant he was visiting his other family. I was going through some old papers when I found a folder I had never seen before. Inside were legal documents, many legal documents. The first was the title deed to our apartment. But there was something odd. The document stated that the apartment was solely in Rodrigo's name, not in both our names, as he had told me. The bureaucratic formalities he had made me sign were actually a transfer of my rights to the property. The second document was a loan contract. Rodrigo had taken out a loan for $150,000 using the apartment as collateral, a loan I had never authorized, but that, according to the paper, bore my signature. The third was a will in which Rodrigo left everything to his children, and Patricia. I wasn't mentioned anywhere. I froze. He hadn't just deceived me emotionally. He had deceived me financially. He had used me. He had robbed me. And then, as I reviewed the last document in the folder, I found something that changed everything. It was a marriage certificate. But not ours. It was for Rodrigo and Patricia. Dated 7 years ago, in another country, but completely legal. Rodrigo didn't just have another family. Rodrigo was married to her. Our marriage wasn't valid. It never had been. I wasn't his wife. I was his mistress. I don't know how long I sat on the floor, holding that marriage certificate with trembling hands. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. Time had stopped making sense. Everything had been a lie. The parents he had introduced me to weren't his parents. They were actors, or accomplices, or paid neighbors. I didn't know, and it no longer mattered. The wedding, the ring, the vows, the promises, none of it was real. Legally, I was no one. A fool who had signed papers without reading them, and who had handed over her money, her home, and her heart to a professional con artist. Because that's what Rodrigo was. Not a confused man caught between two loves. Not a devoted father trying to do the right thing. He was a con artist, a manipulator, a criminal. And I was going to destroy him. I called Alejandro Torres that same night. I explained everything I had found. The fake marriage, the fraudulent loan, the document forgery. "This changes everything," he told me, his voice sounding excited for the first time. "With these documents, we can not only annul the marriage, we can file criminal charges for fraud, forgery, and bigamy." Bigamy? If he was already legally married when he married you, he committed bigamy. It's a serious crime. He could go to prison. The idea of Rodrigo behind bars gave me a satisfaction I shouldn't admit to. But it still wasn't enough. I wanted more. I wanted him to suffer like I had suffered. I wanted him to lose everything, just like I had lost everything. "What if I also take care of ruining his reputation?" I asked. "What do you mean?" "Rodrigo works at an important company. He has a public image to maintain. His bosses, his clients, his colleagues, none of them know the truth about him. What would happen if they found out?" Alejandro paused. "Legally, you have the right to share truthful information about your own experience. If everything you say is true and you can prove it, you wouldn't be committing defamation. But I must warn you, these things can backfire. People don't always react as you expect. I don't care. I want everyone to know who Rodrigo Mendoza really is. Then let's do it right, strategically, so that when he falls hard." I spent the next 4 weeks preparing everything with the precision of a surgeon. I hired a private investigator who confirmed what I already knew and discovered much more. It turned out I wasn't Rodrigo's first other woman. There had been at least 2 before me, both swindled in a similar way. One had lost her house. Another had lost her life savings. Neither had reported it because they were too ashamed to admit they had been deceived. I also discovered that Rodrigo's parents were actually his aunt and uncle, paid to play the part during our relationship. Rodrigo's real mother had died when he was a child, and his father was in prison for fraud. It seemed the apple didn't fall far from the tree. But the most interesting thing was what I discovered about Patricia. Patricia wasn't an innocent victim, as I had initially assumed. She knew everything. She knew about me from the beginning. In fact, it had been her idea for Rodrigo to marry me. "We need the money," she had written in a message I managed to recover. "That idiot has a good job and property. Marry her, take everything you can from her, and then we divorce and keep everything." That idiot. That's what they called me. The idiot they were going to fleece. My pain turned into rage, and my rage turned into determination. I chose the day carefully. It was Rodrigo and Patricia's wedding anniversary. 7 years together. According to my investigations, they were going to celebrate with a dinner at the same restaurant from the photo I had found on his phone. Their children would be with a babysitter, and all their close friends had been invited. It was perfect. At 7 in the evening, I was sitting at a table at the back of the restaurant, wearing the same red dress Patricia had worn in that photo. A petty detail, I admit, but it gave me immense satisfaction. Rodrigo and Patricia arrived at 8. He looked as handsome as ever, wearing that gray suit I had given him for his birthday. She was prettier than I expected, with dark hair and a smile that seemed genuine. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The guests arrived over the next hour, friends, family, co-workers, all celebrating the beautiful love of Rodrigo and Patricia, all unaware of the bomb about to explode. At 9:30, when the restaurant was full and everyone had their wine glasses in hand, I got up from my table and walked to the center of the room. "Excuse me," I said loudly. "I'd like to make a toast." Rodrigo saw me, And in that moment, I saw something I will never forget. The color draining from his face, his eyes widened like saucers, his mouth hung half open. "Valentina," he whispered, "what are you doing here?" "Oh, you didn't invite me? How rude of you. Although I suppose it's difficult to invite your legal wife to your other wife's anniversary party." The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved, no one breathed. Patricia was the first to speak. "Who is this woman?" she asked Rodrigo, in a voice trying to sound casual but trembling slightly. "Oh, hasn't he told you about me? How strange, because you certainly told me a lot about him. That idiot has a good job and property. Marry her. Take everything you can from her." "Does that sound familiar?" Patricia paled. Rodrigo tried to get up, but I stopped him with a gesture. "Sit down. I'm not finished." I took out my phone and connected it to the projector I had installed in the restaurant earlier. Yes, I had arrived hours before and convinced the owner that I was going to do a surprise presentation for an anniversary party. I didn't lie, I just omitted some details. The documents appeared on the screen: Rodrigo and Patricia's marriage certificate. Our marriage certificate. The fraudulent loan documents, screenshots of the messages where they planned to swindle me, photos of the other victims. Everything. "Rodrigo Mendoza is not who he says he is," I announced as the images changed. "He is a professional con artist who has been deceiving vulnerable women for years. I married him 3 months ago, without knowing he was already legally married. He made me sign documents that stripped me of my property. He took out a loan for $150,000 by forging my signature, and his lovely wife, Patricia, was his accomplice the entire time." The murmur that swept through the restaurant was like a tsunami. Some people took out their phones to record. Others simply stared open-mouthed. "Is this true, Rodrigo?" asked one of his friends. "Is all of this true?" Rodrigo didn't answer. He couldn't. His world was collapsing before his eyes, and he could do nothing to stop it. "This is a lie," Patricia suddenly screamed, standing up. "This woman is crazy. She's a bitter ex who wants to destroy our marriage." I smiled at her, with all the calm I could muster. "Ex? Darling, legally I'm still married to your husband. Although I suppose that will change soon, considering you're both going to jail for fraud and bigamy." "Jail?" Patricia turned to Rodrigo. "What is she talking about?" "I filed the report this morning," I continued. "The police should be arriving any minute now. In fact, as if on cue, 2 officers entered the restaurant at that very moment. I walked over to them and pointed at Rodrigo and Patricia. "That's them," I said. "The con artists." What followed was the most beautiful chaos I have ever witnessed. Rodrigo tried to flee through the back door, but the officers stopped him. Patricia screamed that she was innocent, that she didn't know anything, that it was all Rodrigo's fault. The guests watched in horror as the perfect couple was handcuffed before their eyes. And I stood in the middle of it all, feeling something I hadn't felt in months: peace. The following months were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, interviews, and paperwork, but it was worth it. Rodrigo was sentenced to 5 years in prison for fraud, document forgery, and bigamy. Patricia received 3 years for complicity. The apartment they had stolen from me was returned, and I obtained financial compensation that more than covered everything I had lost. I also learned that the public exposure had additional consequences. Rodrigo lost his job, of course, but he also lost his fake parents, who were charged as accomplices. And most importantly, his children were placed in the custody of Patricia's sister, a decent woman who had no idea what her sister had been doing. Did I feel guilty about the children? A little. They hadn't chosen their parents. But it also wasn't my responsibility to bear the consequences of Rodrigo and Patricia's decisions. Those children deserved to grow up with honest adults, not professional con artists. It has been a year since that night at the restaurant. A year since my life split in two, and I had to rebuild it from the rubble. I won't lie. There were difficult moments. Moments when I doubted myself, when I wondered if I had done the right thing, when the pain was so intense I could barely breathe. Moments when I woke up at 3 in the morning, thinking about everything I had lost. But there were also moments of clarity. Moments when I understood that what happened to me wasn't my fault, that trusting someone isn't a flaw, but a virtue. That being deceived didn't make me stupid, it made me human. Today my life is very different. I sold the apartment I had shared with Rodrigo and moved to another city, where no one knows my story. I started a new job at a smaller but more honest company. I made new friends. I adopted a dog named Justice, because I have a somewhat twisted sense of humor. And 3 months ago, I met someone. His name is Daniel. He is an elementary school teacher. He has a shy smile and large hands. He helped me carry my grocery bags when one broke in the middle of the street, and he bought me a coffee to apologize for seeing my tampons roll all over the sidewalk. I don't know if this will turn into something serious. I don't know if I will ever trust someone the way I trusted Rodrigo again, but for the first time in a long time, I'm willing to try. Because that's what we survivors do. We get up, we rebuild ourselves, and we move forward. If you are listening to this story and identify with it, I want to tell you something. You are not alone. People like Rodrigo exist everywhere, in all forms. They are experts at detecting their victims and manipulating them until they can't distinguish reality from lies. They use love as a weapon. They use trust as a tool. And when they're done with us, they leave us wondering what we did wrong. But we did nothing wrong. Loving is not a crime. Trusting is not a flaw. Believing in someone is not a weakness. The weakness is in them, in their need to lie, to manipulate, to destroy, in their inability to be honest, to truly love, to build something real. We are the strong ones. We are the ones who get up after we are knocked down. We are the ones who choose to keep believing in love, despite everything that has been done to us. And that, dear listeners, is the sweetest revenge of all. It's not the jail time. It's not the public humiliation. It's not the recovered money. The sweetest revenge is living well. It's finding the happiness they tried to steal from us. It's proving that they didn't destroy us. Rodrigo wanted to ruin my life. And all he managed to do was teach me how strong I can be. Thank you for listening to my story. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling me what you would have done in my place. Would you have confronted Rodrigo in public? Would you have run away without saying anything? Would you have sought another form of revenge? I want to read your opinions. Until the next story. And remember, he who laughs last laughs best, especially if the one who laughed first is now in prison.